The Silent Council. The galaxy was a vast and complex tapestry, woven together by countless civilizations, each vying for power, knowledge, and survival. Among these great empires and species, one held dominion over all others, the Galactic Council. A council composed of leaders from the most formidable and advanced species known to the cosmos, meeting in a chamber that floated among the stars, high above any planet, far from any civilization. The council was the universe's fragile mechanism of balance. Decisions made here influenced everything from the fate of entire star systems to the survival of countless species. But today, this council had gathered for a singular purpose: to witness the activation of an ancient artifact, the true significance of which none of them fully understood. The chamber was silent, a rare and unnerving stillness. The great leaders, the embodiments of their respective empires, sat in their seats, their eyes, many of them glowing, some insect-like, others mechanical, were locked onto the massive central display at the heart of the room. There was no chatter, no bickering, just a quiet tension that hung in the air, thick and heavy. Holographic projections of alien faces flickered above the table, their attention fixed on the scene unfolding before them. It was an image of space, deep and endless. Far from any known star, in an uncharted region of the galaxy known as the Czar Expanse, a singular object dominated the view. It was a colossal structure, a ring, floating in the cold vacuum of space. Its surface shimmered with an ethereal glow, and though it appeared to be an ancient relic, its edges worn and weathered by the passage of time, it pulsed with an energy that defied understanding. The ring had existed for millennia, orbiting a dead star, and for just as long, it had been the subject of speculation, myth, and fear. No one knew its true origin. It could have been the creation of a long-extinct species, a weapon from an ancient war, or perhaps something far beyond the comprehension of any of the species that now dominated the galaxy. For centuries, the Galactic Council had debated its purpose. Could it be a planetary destruction device, a portal to another dimension? Or perhaps, as some had feared, a tool that could grant ultimate control over reality itself? Every major empire had sent expeditions to study it, but none had come close to unlocking its secrets. Until now. The Exoc Dominion, the galaxy's most feared empire, had made a breakthrough. Their scientists had cracked the code. The Exoc were a terrifying species, cold, calculating, and ruthless, their reach extending across multiple systems, bringing entire civilizations to their knees. Their flagship, the unyielding Wrath, stood as a symbol of their might, and it was this fleet that now surrounded the ancient ring. Supreme Commander Vascor, the leader of the Exoc Dominion, stood at the helm of the operation. His 6 crimson eyes gleamed with pride as he addressed his officers. "This is the moment history will remember," Vascor declared, his voice a deep, resonant rumble that echoed through the command center of the unyielding Wrath. For millennia, this weapon has waited for a worthy hand to wield it. Today, the galaxy will bow before the Exoc Dominion. His words were met with murmurs of agreement from his officers. The Exoc were a species of war, and they had long believed that the galaxy should be ruled by the strongest. Now they had the means to prove their dominance beyond question. The ring was their key, and they would use it to crush any who dared oppose them. As Vascor's words settled over the crew, the final sequence began. The control room of the unyielding Wrath hummed with anticipation as the Exoc's lead scientists activated the sequence. The ring's surface began to shimmer, faint symbols appearing and disappearing in rapid succession. The energy readings on the nearby consoles skyrocketed, and the hum of the ship deepened, vibrating through the steel walls. Every officer in the room held their breath as the moment of activation drew near. Among the council members, there was a shared sense of unease. A few whispered to one another, exchanging glances, but none dared speak louder than a murmur. The alien leaders, each of them proud and powerful in their own right, knew that the activation of this artifact could change the very course of galactic history. Some feared the weapon would bring ruin to all. Others saw it as a tool to enforce their dominance over the galaxy. But one thing was certain. The Exoc Dominion would be the first to wield it. And then, without warning, something strange happened. A tiny blip appeared on the edge of the Exoc fleet's sensor grid. At first, it was barely noticeable, but it quickly became clear that this was not just a passing anomaly. The object was emerging from hyperspace, directly in the middle of the massive fleet. It was an unmarked vessel, so small it barely registered on the fleet's radar. The ship appeared to be lost, drifting aimlessly as it cut through the cold void of space. Its sensors couldn't have possibly registered the presence of the unyielding Wrath or any of the other warships that surrounded it. In fact, it looked like the vessel had no idea where it had arrived. Inside the ship, Lieutenant James Carter, a seasoned pilot, was lounging in his seat, sipping a cup of coffee. Beside him, Dr. Emily Ross, his co-pilot and lead scientist, frowned at the readouts on her screen. The ship was a research vessel, the SS Newton, a ship that was barely more than a glorified cargo hauler. They had been on a routine mission to collect data from distant star systems, but something had gone horribly wrong with their navigation. "Ah, James," Emily said, her voice tinged with concern. "I think we jumped to the wrong coordinates." James Carter, never one to panic easily, blinked in surprise and looked at the console in front of him. The navigation system displayed a massive Exoc war fleet surrounding the very object that had dominated the Council's discussion. A colossal ring, glowing ominously in the distance. Carter's eyes widened. "Oh crap," he muttered. Before they could react, their radio crackled to life. A deep, guttural voice emanated from the speakers, the tone filled with command and authority. "Unidentified vessel. This is the Exoc Dominion. You have trespassed into restricted space. Power down your ship immediately, or be annihilated." Carter and Ross exchanged a nervous glance. The Exoc Dominion was not known for giving second chances. Carter swallowed hard and cleared his throat. "Hey, Salak dudes," he said, attempting to sound casual. "This is the SS Newton, a small research vessel. We, seem to have jumped to the wrong coordinates. No need for the whole annihilation thing." There was a long silence, broken only by the distant hum of the ship's engines. Finally, the voice on the other end responded. "You are in the presence of the Exoc Dominion's most glorious fleet. Surrender or die." Carter turned to Ross, a nervous smile creeping onto his face. "Okay, yeah, that sounds bad. Really bad. What gave it away?" Ross, deadpan as ever, sighed. "Well, the fact that we're surrounded by a massive war fleet kind of gave it away." Carter scratched his chin thoughtfully. "All right, let's just play it cool. Maybe we can." Before he could finish his sentence, Ross accidentally tapped the diagnostic scan button on her console. A harmless scanning beam shot from their ship, striking the surface of the ancient ring. The artifact shuddered. The entire Exoc fleet went on high alert. Carter blinked. "What did you just do?" Ross's eyes widened. "I don't know. It was just a scan. It was harmless." But the ring wasn't responding the way they had expected. The surface of the artifact began to pulse violently. Symbols flashed across its surface, and the energy readings spiked to unprecedented levels. The sound that followed was unlike anything Carter had ever heard. A deep, thunderous hum that reverberated through space itself. It was a sound so powerful, so low that it shook the very fabric of the universe. Carter and Ross watched in stunned silence as the ring began to glow brighter and brighter, until in an instant it erupted. A massive wave of energy exploded outward, not in fire, not as a beam, but in a pure destabilization field that tore through everything in its path. And in an instant, the Exoc fleet was gone. Every single ship, from the flagship Unyielding Wrath to the smallest fighter, was eradicated in the blink of an eye. The Council, watching in disbelief, could only watch as the video feed showed the entire fleet disintegrating before their eyes. The tiny human ship, the SS Newton, sat motionless in the middle of it all, untouched, unaffected. James Carter and Dr. Emily Ross exchanged a glance. Carter, his voice barely above a whisper, said simply, "Whoops." The silence in the council chamber was deafening. The Exoc Dominion, the most powerful fleet in the galaxy, had just been wiped out without a single shot being fired. No glorious battle, no counterattack, just utter annihilation. And all of it triggered by a single accidental scan. The ripple effect. Back in the council chamber, a sense of disbelief spread through the room like wildfire. The flickering holograms of alien leaders, once confident and stoic, now shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The leaders of the Galactic Council, from every corner of the universe, exchanged frantic glances. Their eyes, once filled with a sense of superiority and control, now mirrored uncertainty, fear, and awe. They had watched in real time as the most feared fleet in the galaxy, an armada that had crushed countless civilizations, was eradicated in less than a blink of an eye. The Exoc Dominion had been obliterated without a single retaliatory shot fired, and the human vessel responsible for this unprecedented disaster hadn't even meant to do it. The screens before them display the aftermath. The vast emptiness where once the Exoc fleet had existed, now devoid of any trace. The unyielding Wrath, the flagship, was reduced to dust, its massive hull disintegrated by a mysterious force that no one could explain. Smaller ships, once the pride of the Exoc Dominion, were scattered like ashes in the wind. The energy wave from the ring had torn through everything, as if the very fabric of space had been unraveled in its wake. The silence in the council chamber was palpable. Not a single leader dared to speak for what felt like an eternity, as the full weight of what had just happened began to sink in. The humans, these insignificant creatures in the grand scale of the galaxy, had wiped out the Exoc Dominion's entire fleet in the blink of an eye, and they had done so accidentally. The first to break the silence was Ravon, the leader of the Tilar, an insectoid species known for their vast knowledge of the galaxy's ancient technologies. His chittering voice echoed through the chamber, filled with a mixture of disbelief and caution. "Is it possible?" he murmured. "Could they have done this on purpose?" A second alien leader, Zrix, a hulking figure from the Fralin Empire, his body armored in thick, crystalline plates, leaned forward. His voice was a deep rumble that carried the weight of years spent ruling with strength. What if they didn't mean to? What if it was an accident? The words hung in the air. No one had any answers. No one had seen anything like this before. The SS Newton, a ship no larger than a small freighter, had somehow triggered an event that had wiped out the most formidable fleet the galaxy had ever known. No one, not even the Exoc Dominion themselves, had been able to activate the ring. Yet here were these humans, barely even aware of the catastrophic consequences their accidental scan had unleashed. Vascor, the supreme commander of the Exoc Dominion, had always been a towering figure. His 6 crimson eyes burned with pride and determination. He was the one who had believed that the Exoc were destined to rule the galaxy. He had been so sure that this ring, this weapon, would be the means of that domination. Yet now he was nothing more than a fading memory in the cosmic void. His fleet, his pride, was gone. And the humans, the very species they had underestimated, had inadvertently pulled the trigger. The council members turned their attention back to the feed, still frozen on the SS Newton, which was now surrounded by the eerie remnants of the destroyed fleet. The human vessel appeared, for all intents and purposes, untouched. Carter and Ross sat inside, their expressions frozen in wide-eyed disbelief, as they realized the scope of the catastrophe they had just unwittingly caused. "What happens now?" a voice asked, breaking through the tense atmosphere. It was Lyra, the leader of the Varnath Collective, a group of organic-based intelligences that had once been a peaceful race before they discovered the darker aspects of technological advancement. Their empire had once been a beacon of enlightenment, but like many others, they had fallen prey to the temptation of power. Now, Lyra's voice carried an edge of fear. The Varnath, known for their knowledge of diplomacy, had never before encountered a situation where no form of negotiation, no power, could save them from the unpredictable consequences of human intervention. The council sat in stunned silence, but soon murmurs erupted. Their quiet deliberation, their attempts to preserve a delicate balance of power in the galaxy, had just been shattered. The Exarch, with their ruthless and calculated conquests, were gone. The force that had eradicated them, it seemed, was an accident. An accident that, if repeated, could wipe out entire empires without so much as a single shot. The lights in the chamber dimmed slightly as the conversation grew increasingly heated. Some council members wanted to send a delegation to the SS Newton to study the humans and understand what had happened. Others argued that any such action would be a declaration of war. If the humans had the power to obliterate entire fleets by accident, what would happen if they decided to turn their attention to other empires? A third voice, smooth and calculating, spoke next. It was Helcor, the leader of the John Dominion, a race of technologically advanced beings who had always viewed themselves as the pinnacle of intelligence. We should approach this carefully, Selkor said, his tone calm and logical. The humans are a species that, up until now, have been relatively insignificant. We have underestimated them, but their ability to destroy a fleet with a simple scan suggests they possess an advanced level of technology. Perhaps it is time to observe them more closely. The room fell quiet again as every leader considered Selkor's suggestion. The humans were unpredictable. They were the unknown variable in a galaxy full of certainties. If the humans had this kind of power, it was not something that could be ignored. The Galactic Council had been built on the idea that no one species would ever grow too powerful. But what if the humans were the exception? What if, despite their seeming insignificance, they were the most dangerous species the galaxy had ever encountered? Back aboard the SS Newton, Carter and Ross still sat in stunned silence. It wasn't until the moment of sheer disbelief passed that they fully realized the magnitude of what had just happened. They had destroyed an entire fleet. They had triggered the most powerful weapon in the galaxy, and they hadn't even meant to. This can't be real, Carter muttered, his voice shaking as he glanced at the readouts on his console. We're not dead, Ross replied, her voice equally unsure. We're not destroyed. I don't know how, but we're still here. Carter leaned back in his chair, his hands trembling as he wiped his face. This isn't just a whoops moment, Emily. We've just rewritten the history of the galaxy. Dr. Emily Ross didn't respond. Instead, her fingers hovered over the controls, unsure of what to do next. The only thing she was sure of was that the council would soon find out what they had done. And when they did, nothing would ever be the same again. The very fabric of galactic politics, the balance of power, and the future of the human race would be irrevocably altered. Whether for better or worse, no one could say yet. But one thing was certain. The universe would never forget the moment when humanity's accidental touch had erased an empire. And the ripples of that event would be felt across the galaxy for generations to come. The unraveling. As the days passed, the shockwaves from the Exarch Dominion's destruction rippled through the galaxy. The Council, once a powerful institution of diplomacy and control, found itself thrust into a state of utter chaos. The galaxy was in turmoil. The destruction of the Exarch fleet was not just a military defeat, it was a profound shift in the balance of power. One that no one had anticipated, especially not the humans, whose accidental involvement had shaken every empire to its core. On the SS Newton, Carter and Ross continued their journey through the stars, unaware of the consequences of their actions. The ship, small and insignificant compared to the colossal fleets they had just inadvertently destroyed, continued on its way as if nothing had happened. But the reality was far different. Across the galaxy, factions were reacting in ways that no one could have predicted. The Exarch Dominion's destruction did not just open the floodgates for fear and suspicion, it also invited a wave of curiosity. Suddenly, Every species, every empire wanted to understand what had happened. Some were terrified of the possibility that humanity could have wielded such power by accident. Others were fascinated, eager to explore the depths of this new, powerful species they had underestimated for so long. The humans, once considered mere ants in the grand cosmos, now stood at the center of a galactic storm. The council chambers were in disarray. The leaders of the galaxy, each from a species with their own agendas and goals, had never been so divided. The Tlar, ever the scholars, had long feared the consequences of unchecked power. Ravon, their leader, was particularly vocal in his concern. If this is what humans can do by accident, he said, his voice low and filled with tension, then what could they do on purpose? Could they destroy entire systems if they wanted to? Zrix, the formidable Fralin leader, was less concerned with the existential threat humanity posed and more focused on the potential opportunity. What if we can form an alliance with them? He suggested, his rough voice barely masking his excitement. Imagine what they could bring to the table. If they can destroy a fleet by accident, think of what they could do for us if they choose to fight by our side. But Lyra, leader of the Varnath collective, was quick to counter. Allies or enemies? The humans are unpredictable. We cannot risk empowering a species that has already proven it can destroy a fleet by accident. Who knows what they could do with their full strength? The debate raged on for hours, and still, no resolution was reached. Fear and greed were both present in equal measure. Every empire knew they could no longer ignore the human presence in the galaxy. It wasn't just their technology that was so shocking. It was their sheer unpredictability. One wrong move, one careless action, and they had wiped out an entire fleet without even trying. What would they do next? Would they destroy other fleets by accident? Or would they decide to turn their might against other civilizations on purpose? Across the galaxy, whispers began to circulate. The humans, once unknown and insignificant, were now the subject of intense interest. Intelligence networks were scrambling to gather any information they could about this mysterious species. Every major empire, from the Varnath to the John Dominion, began to send covert missions to observe Earth, hoping to learn more about the humans' capabilities and, more importantly, their potential weaknesses. The Exoc Dominion's once unquestionable supremacy had been obliterated by an accident, and every empire in the galaxy feared that humanity might be the next power to rise uncontested. Back aboard the SS Newton, Carter and Ross continued their journey, blissfully unaware of the galactic maelstrom that had erupted in their wake. They spent their days going through routine tasks, analyzing data from nearby systems, calibrating their equipment, and having long conversations about the strange turn their mission had taken. But even as they tried to carry on with their research, both of them could feel the weight of what they had unknowingly done pressing down on them. "Do you think the Council knows what happened?" Ross asked one day as she stared at the ship's communication screen, which remained silent and still. Carter, who had been studying the stars outside the viewport, leaned back in his chair and sighed. "I'm sure they do. They've probably seen the feed by now. They might even be trying to figure out how we triggered that. Whatever that was, I can't even wrap my head around it. We didn't even mean to." Ross gave him a look. "I know, but something doesn't feel right. It's like we've woken something up. Something big." Carter frowned. "I don't think anyone even knows what that thing is. How could we have known it would do that?" Ross leaned back in her seat, staring out the window at the empty space around them. "I don't know, James, but I have a feeling we're about to find out." It was clear that something was shifting. The deep silence of space around them felt oppressive, as though they were on the precipice of a much larger conflict that neither of them fully understood. Days later, an unexpected transmission came through the SS Newton's communication system. The message was from an unknown source, and it was brief but urgent. "This is the Galactic Council. You are to cease all activity immediately and prepare to be boarded for questioning. You will provide an explanation for the destruction of the Exoc fleet. Failure to comply will result in immediate action. Carter stared at the screen, his heart racing. He had expected to hear from someone, eventually, but he hadn't anticipated a direct transmission from the Galactic Council itself. "This is it," he muttered, leaning closer to the console. "They know." Ross was already standing up, pulling on her jacket. "What do we do? We can't just ignore it. But we don't know what's going to happen when they board us. This could be the end of everything for us." Carter rubbed his temples, trying to think quickly. "We can't let them take us without a fight. We have to buy some time, figure out what they want from us. I'm not ready to just roll over and let them dictate our fate." Ross nodded in agreement. "All right, we'll have to be smart. Let's power up the ship's defenses and prepare for whatever they throw at us." As the Council's message lingered in the background, both Carter and Ross knew that their next actions would determine not only their fates, but possibly the fate of humanity as a whole. The Galactic Council was coming for them, and they had no idea what kind of storm they were about to unleash. In the Council chamber, leaders continued to debate the future of the humans in the galaxy. Fear, curiosity, and ambition simmered beneath the surface of every conversation. Whatever the humans had triggered, it was clear that they had done so by accident. But now that the galaxy had seen the power of their unintended actions, the question on every leader's mind was the same. Could the humans be controlled, or would they rise up to challenge the very foundation of the universe? And so, the galaxy held its breath, waiting for the next move.